Before we get back to the BR600, I wanted to show you this Briggs & Stratton horizontal crankshaft motor that I got to finish one day. It's a 8 cubic inch, and I put new valve guides in it and cut new seats, and it's got new valves, and it's overboard to the next size piston. And like I said, it's a future project that I got to finish up. And so let's get started on the BR600. By the way, if you're interested more about the Briggs & Stratton 8 cubic inch, it's one of my YouTube videos. Hello everyone, I'm back. And while I was gone, I used a bore scope, and I inserted it in the spark plug opening. And as I suspected, it's really, the top of the piston's really carboned up. So hopefully that's what's wrong with this. I also did a compression test, and if you go back and look at when the valves are, I'm turning the motor over by hand, and you can see the valves open and close. On the exhaust valve, you can see that it closes and then it pops open just a little bit and then closes again. And a lot of motors, small motors that, well, at least I know that Briggs & Stratton does it also, that are pull start, they have that, and it's so that there isn't a lot of compression when you pull it over. So it's really difficult to get a good compression reading, just by pulling the pull start. In Briggs & Stratton, they don't have any listings for compression for their motors. For like the mowers, the first mowers, the 5 horsepower, and I guess most of their mowers, to test the compression, you put it on the compression stroke, and then you back the blade off a little bit, and you bounce it against the compression. If it bounces back, then they say the compression's good. And so I checked on Stihl, their specs, and they say the compression should be 7.5 to 8.5 bar, which that's like 120 psi, but it's measured at 1,000 RPM, and you're never going to get 1,000 RPM. With a pull start, you're going to probably need to have like use a drill or something. But I have two of these that run, and one has a brand new motor in it. The guy threw it away. I guess whoever he took it to apparently put a new motor in there, and it was the actual the tubing. It was dry rotted, and that was all that was wrong with it. And I think it needed the primer bulb. I think it needed a new primer bulb too. And so it's got a new motor in it, and that I checked the compression just by pulling the pull start, and that was like 30 psi. So I'm thinking that's for that should be pretty good, pretty accurate. And this one I got like 10 psi out of it. So I'm thinking that hopefully that it's just carboned up really bad, the valve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart the rest of the way, and I will include pictures of the top of the piston that I used with the bore scope. And like I said, I put a bore scope in there, and the top of the piston was really, really carboned up. I mean, it was thick carbon. So I'll include those pictures too a little bit later. They're upstairs on my laptop. Okay, so let's get started. So what I have to do is take the valve cover off again, and I have to take the rocker arms off, and I have to take the push rods out. So that's the first step. Also, if you haven't done it, what I did is I ordered a set of Torx because I'm very displeased with the. I like Harbor Freight tools. I like a lot of all their tools. I think there's something else that I didn't like one of their tools, but generally all their tools I like. Their Torx, whatever they are junk. Don't buy them. They're terrible. They need to be S2. So I went on Amazon, bought a set of Torx. I bought they're S2 Stihl, and I think the actual the top part is S2, and the bottom part is CRV, which I think is like chrome vandalum or something, whatever they call it. So let's see if we get the best light on this. There we go. So I mounted this back on the blower housing. It gives me a little bit of something to. I don't have to clamp it in a vise or something like that until I actually take the bottom end apart. Then I'll have to take it out again. Take the old gasket off. It's got a crack in this. It's really brittle. That's cork, I think. I think it's a special nut that, see how it's the top of it? It causes it to when you tighten it down, it will never loosen up. Then you can pull this out, the center. This comes out. And this round, this part goes in. It's sort of rounded. That goes in towards the combustion chamber. There's the rocker arm. To take the push rod, there's the push rod. That's without a doubt the smallest push rod I've ever seen. See, that nut's got the same. See, it's sort of like a triangle. It's like a pinch nut or something. So when you put it on there, it's like it's got instant lock, locking properties. Then this has this inside insert, and the round part goes in. the other rocker arm. You know, like in cars and stuff like that. You know, I always number the rocker arms so they always go back. You know, all the whole valve train. Make sure the push rod goes with the right rocker arm, but it doesn't say anything about that in the manual. So I'm going to assume that that's something that doesn't have to be done. So then you need to take this cover off here. Those are they're kind of coarse for going into aluminum, but probably should take this out of the. It's a hot day out there today. Another hot day. I was down at the river the other day, Potomac River. It's nice and cool down there. Ta-da. I still think this is one of the really. I love little engines, little motors. I think they're wonderful. One of the reasons why is, you know, like a single cylinder, you can have like a V8 or something like that, and you can have a bad cylinder that can be motorized by all the other cylinders. Yeah, it's not going to run as good, you know, but I mean, with a single cylinder, everything's got to be perfect. These two corners, I can look and see them. They're I don't want to break any of the cooling fins or anything. There it goes. Oh man, everything fell apart. Oh no. So these are like the tappets, cam followers or whatever. There's no actual gasket. It's just it's like form a gasket. I think when you put this back together, this cam lobe has to be facing up. And there's two arrows. They point to something. I forgot. So might as well take the bottom off, right? See, now those threads look more like something going in the metal. See, this doesn't have a, that just comes right off. That's the bottom part of the, it's got, looks like it has bearing inserts too. Whoops. Yeah, it looks like, no, probably not. It's probably just part of the casting. Because it has roller bearings, so yeah, it's not a plain, it's not plain bearing. Those are just and this has like form a gasket on it also. Uh-oh. See, that's pretty carboned up. Piston looks really good. Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, that's, I mean, the piston looks really nice. You know, I'm thinking that it's probably just, it's probably just, it's probably just carboned up. I don't know if you can see that in there. See, it looks just like it's, looks like it might be just carbon. Hopefully it is. Thinking about how I'm going to remove the valves. I have a small engine valve remover, but yeah, it's got this is like the whole block and everything. Yeah, it just works on like if you had just the head part. Okay, so what I need to do now today is I need to take the valves out. So what I'm going to need to do is find a way to hold the valve while I take the collet off the top. So I'm probably going to chuck some. Probably going to chuck a rod or something in the vise. So let me see what I can find. So I chucked this. It's either bronze or brass. It's whichever one won't spark. I think it's bronze because it's supposed to be a sparkless punch if you're working around like gas or something like that. So let me see how this does. Oh, that was easy. I did it with my fingers. It was kind of fun. What I had to do is push down on it and slide it. That way it's let me take the. See how it's like a keyhole, and the small top part to the top. That's what locks into the valve stem, and then the other part, the bottom part, that's what you have to slide it to, and it's bigger than the valve stem, and it'll go down by my thumb, and then it will pop out. And there's the spring. And there's the valve. It's not carboned up. You know, I thought it would be, but looks pretty good. Let me see if I can look in there and see what. See how it's carboned up right there on the right hand side about 3 o'clock. Wait a minute, is that 3 o'clock? Yeah, about 3 o'clock. Closest to the spark plug. See, the other side of the seat's good. Zoom in a little bit more. And the bore looks good. I mean, the bore of the cylinder, when it looks really nice. The piston looks good. I don't see any blow by. I think it's just it got really carboned up. I mean, you can see the combustion chamber. Look how. Yes, that's how easy it is. And it looks like they have looks like they have valve guides too, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's aluminum, so yeah, you'd probably want, since the valves are steel, you'd probably want valve guides. I wonder if they have the replacement valve guides. That one looks, So this is the exhaust valve. It's the smallest, I guess. So yeah, it looks a little bit carboned up. Oh yeah, that one's the seat's carboned up really bad. So yeah, the exhaust valve seat is really carboned up. So this is what I got. It's this brush set, engine rebuilding brush set, it says, I think. I've cut the top off in the side so I can open it up. This should work great. So I'm going to use this brush first. Try this. And use this, the extension, and then that's the handle for it. So this is what I bought. It's the Walmart equivalent of Seafoam. And I'm going to try soaking the combustion chamber, the valve seats in this, and see if it loosens up that carbon. The carbon's pretty well, it's really burnt on there. Well, there's nothing worse than putting a four-stroke motor back together and you get a little bit of a gasket leak, some oil leaking out of the crankcase or something. But on a two-cycle, that's really bad. And basically, you don't want to leak on a two-cycle because you're leaning out the charge that's going into the combustion chamber. So when you clean the gasket, to clean the gasket cement off, I have some plastic razor blades that I use, because you don't want to, you put a four-stroke together, and a little bit of oil misting out somewhere. It's not a big deal, but on these it is, because even though this is actually a four-stroke, it's also basically works as a two-cycle, because right here you can see where on the intake, I think it's over here, yeah, the intake, so you can see what it does is it comes up right through there. Part of the intake that's coming in, so part of the charge is coming in, goes right into the top right there. And that circulates through the whole engine, for the lubricate everything. So if you have a little bit of leak, it's sort of like it's kind of double defeating, because it's like for a four-stroke, it's like having on a car, it's like having a leak after the MAF. And on a like a regular car with a carburetor, it's like having a leak in the manifold somewhere. You're going to get a leaner charge. But then also it's going to, I don't know what it will do to the circulation of the lubricant. It depends on how big the leak is, but it's not going to run good either. So you don't want to gouge any of the gasket surfaces or anything. So you want to be really careful, scraping the sealant off. And then also, like all the bolt holes and everything. You want to make sure you blow those out with air because there's nothing worse. And it, it's all dry and you're putting it together. You put the gasket, the gasket cement on there, and you put the other cover on. Then you screw it in, and there's watery oil in the down in the threads. And when you screw the bolt in, it pushes it out all over everything and ruins the um, the gasket sealing. So what we're going to do now is let's see if this piston has a front and a back. Because I'm going to take the piston off to clean it, and I don't want to put it on backwards. I know that Briggs & Stratton, they have like an arrow or something, like a triangle, I think, at the front. So what does that say? Probably the size. Probably the size of the piston. Okay, so that's there. And then the gear is to the left. So there's the gear. So that's the way it goes forward like that. Here's one of the plastic razor blades. So what's holding the wrist pin in on the side there is a it's like a snap ring. And both ends, it's right at about 12 o'clock. It's about a half inch between. One ends at like about 11, the other starts at like about 1 at the end of the snap ring. Well, what I noticed on the other side of the other side of the piston, right there, it's got like a place where you can get behind the snap ring. So what I did is I went in and I slid the snap ring down so it was only about, the end of it was right about there, and then I just got in there with a pry tool, and it popped out. And I thought I was just going to get one side to pop out, and the whole thing came out. And I heard it ricochet 3 times around the room here, and I think it landed back down by my feet. So I'll be lucky if it did. I've got another motor that I can take. That one I showed you earlier, the piston and everything. I can take the snap ring out of that, or they may even have snap rings that size, like at the hardware store for, just general hardware. There was something else. Oh yeah, this is what the pry tool. These are the pry tools. I have a whole bunch of them, but I thought these would be the best. Well, I didn't find the snap ring, so I'll probably have to take one off the other motor. Little junker. Looked like it got dropped or something, and all the valve stuff's messed up at the top, and it's been the mounting for the valve rocker arms is snapped off. So, but the piston and everything, the crankshaft is good. So I'll just take the snap ring off of that. Found it. I found the snap ring. This thing ricocheted all around the room. There it is right there. So I'm just pushing out the wrist pin. There's the piston, it's off. So this whole crankshaft's pressed together. they press it all together. So there's no connecting rod bolts or anything like that. It's got roller bearings instead of plain bearings. So that's a pretty expensive crankshaft. So I was looking at the piston, and I was thinking, oh, it's only got 2 piston rings, And then I was thinking, I think most 4-strokes only have 3, and they have like 2 compression rings, and then they have an oil control ring. And so, yeah, you don't need an oil control ring because it's being lubed by the fuel, the oil and the fuel. So I did a preliminary cleaning of the piston, and so this one has an arrow, which that should point to the front of the engine. And then I think these are the marks that I thought would go towards the the gear. So I went in and that's correct because I put. So this is the front of the engine. I have to pull this off with a puller later so I can get the oil seal off. I already got the other oil seal off on the other side. It's like it's like a rock. All the elasticity's gone from it. I have some on order. So this is the front of the engine. So if I put the piston on here with that pointing forward, like this, if I put that on there like this with it pointing forward to the engine, then those numbers right there at the bottom, it's 6 o'clock, which I said pointed towards the gear, is correct. So that does have an arrow. I think most motors have some way to indicate which goes to the front. I think like Briggs and Stratton, they just have, see how that's like an arrow with a triangle. Well, Briggs and Stratton, they don't have the I don't think they have that line. They just have like the triangle. I mean, that piston's in really nice shape. What they could have been doing is putting too much oil in, in the mix. They could have been putting too much oil in. That's why it carboned up. It's going to seem instantaneous to you, everybody out there, when I put this back together, but I have to wait about another probably a week, 5 business days to get the new oil seals. So they're in the mail, and there's really no gaskets. There's one gasket for the muffler, and I can cut that. I can make that gasket myself. But I don't think there's any other gaskets, just except for those 2 oil seals. Everything else is used a form of gasket or something. Oh, there's a gasket, valve cover gasket. I ordered 2 new valve cover gaskets. They're made out of cork and rubber. And what I'm going to do is I have to order some parts for my Sentra. I'll be working on that next. That's the next video you'll probably see. It's a head gasket replacement on my Sentra. And when I order that, I'm going to order some gasket material from Rock Auto, so I can make my own valve cup. They have cork sheets of cork rubber gasket, so I can make my own gaskets. And when you take the manifold off, the intake manifold, make sure you don't lose this insert. This metal insert goes right in there like that. So what I've got here is the combustion chamber is pretty much cleaned up. All the carbon's gone. And what I'm going to do is there's the exhaust valve, and there's the intake. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lap them in with some some lapping compound, or grinding, valve grinding compound. Lapping and grounding. Lapping's an older term. I've applied the lapping compound to the valve, and you got to make sure that when you clean everything up, you clean up the motor really good and make sure you get all this stuff out of the motor, because just like it grinds down the valves, if this stuff circulates through the motor, it's going to wear everything out. I used a long pair of needle nose pliers to put the valve down in the its valve guide. And what you want to do is you have to have something like, I mean, you could go to the other end, you could attach like a tube to it and put like a wire, wrap a wire around it so it's real tight, and you use that to turn it back and forth. But I found that these are the best. You get a set of them. It's got a little one, it's got a medium, and then on the other set, it's got a bigger one, a large, and then larger. So we're going to use this one, the small one. So what you do is put the suction cup on the valve and turn it around. You can also pull on the valve, and just these valves are, I mean, yeah, these valves are so small. And pull and turn. Just keep turning like 360 degrees. So you can actually also, being really careful not to mess up the top of the valve keeper, you know, where the collet goes in. You can grab the end of the valve very carefully with a pair of needle nose pliers and twist the valve back and forth, pulling at the same time you pull on it. Try to go 360 degrees. And we'll look at that and see what that oh yeah, it looks much better. Grinding compounds, probably good to throw them away so you don't transfer it to your hands at a different time. And then if it gets in a motor, even just a little bit wouldn't be good. So this is the intake valve. And that too looks good. So now I'm going to rinse these out real good. With first I'm going to use carburetor cleaner and then degreaser. What we're going to do now is we're going to check our work. And as we lapped in the valves, it should be concentric all the way around on the valve seat. So if you have any low spots, they'll show by putting some machinist blue dye on the face of the valve and dropping the valve down in the guide. Don't turn the valve, just drop it in, and you should have a nice even blue ring all the way around. So they have a whole bunch of different names for this stuff. So the tube I have is called Prussian Blue, and it's the same. It's by Permatex, and it's the same thing as machinist blue dye. So for a small valve like this, you probably want to get something to apply with, like a toothpick. I'm going to use this, which is the end of a used pop rivet. Something else I shouldn't have mentioned is that you probably needed a few paper towels you should get. So there's the blue. I put it around the face of the valve all the way around. So the theory is, if your valve seat is completely concentric, it doesn't matter where the valve you drop it. As long as the valve isn't warped. As long as wherever you drop the valve, it should seal. So there's the valve. I dropped it down. Now I'm going to push it back out again. I didn't move it back and forth or anything, just dropped it right in. So it's got blue all the way around on the valve seat. Doesn't have much of a contact area, but that's the way they have it. As you can see, the blue goes all the way around too on this. So I'm going to clean these up again and clean the exhaust valve a little bit better too. So I've gone back and I've cleaned up the exhaust valve. Final cleaning. There's still a little bit of residue on the face of the valve, but I'm not too concerned about that. I don't want to really mess with cleaning that because I don't have any way to cut the seats. If cleaning that changes the geometry of the valve. So this ends was it part 2, and part 3 will be the assembly and testing.